Behind every World War II photo is a story that hasn't been fully told. A moment of courage, fear, or quiet resilience frozen in time. What if we could unravel those stories together? Three dads, worn out from the stress of life after Pearl Harbor, came to say goodbye to their kids at Detroit's Central Station on September 23, 1943. The station was full of emotion. There was both pride and sadness in the air. Young men who were excited to join the service were leaving for Fort Custer. Many people have said goodbye to the station, which is a great symbol of change and travel. This one jumped out. It was war, and each person who left carried an unseen weight. The fathers were born into a world that had been changed by the Great Depression and then by war. They were tough but sensitive. They knew too well the price of service because they had already paid it by answering the call to guns for their country. Did their sons fully understand the trip they were going on, or the risks they were taking? While the train hissed and moaned to life, the question hung in the air. For those who saw, the image of the three men stuck in their minds, a silent tribute to the sacrifices families make all over the United States. What would these young guys become? Like so many others before, would they come back as heroes? Or would the fight change them for good? Time would tell. On December 11, 1944, two American soldiers found a short break in the chaos in Geit, Germany, which was cold and had been in battle. Corporal James Gregory and Technician 5th Grade Omer Taylor, both from the 36th Armor Infantry Regiment, 9th Infantry Division, hid behind an M4 Sherman tank. The tanks, which were a sign of American military strength, protected them from constant enemy fire. The smoke from their cigarettes mixed with the cold winter air, giving them a fragile comfort in a fight without mercy. These guys from the US 1st Army were moving forward through the harsh North Rhine-Westphalia area during one of the hardest parts of World War II. The German resistance was strong, and the noise of guns and rifle fire filled the air. Every step forward cost something, and staying alive sometimes looked like a game of chance. Greg and Taylor, who were behind the tank with their guns ready, carried the hopes of a whole country. At that very moment did they think about whether they would live to see the end of the war. Instead, if history would remember the sacrifices they made. The answers were as uncertain as the land they had to go over. It was December 1943, and a group of American forces stayed put in the thick, hot forest of Bougainville Island, Papua New Guinea. Their weapon is a 75mm pack howitzer M1, a small piece of artillery that is meant to be mobile in rough terrain. This gun crew was sent to protect the important Torokina airport from an enemy that was just as determined to take back control of the Pacific. Each person did their job perfectly, their attention never leaving it, and the hot air was thick with fighting. For the Allied troops, the airport was more than just a piece of land. Keeping it meant having control of the air, which was essential for moving forward against the Japanese. Every cannon blast that goes through the forest is a warning of how important things are right now. The men who were guarding the position knew that what they did could change the balance of power in a faraway but important part of the world. As the days went by, the jungle changed into a battlefield where it was hard to see, and the enemy could attack from behind. Did the troops at this station ever wonder if more help would arrive on time, or if they would be left to guard the airport until the very end? The answer hung there, just as uncertain as the fight's outcome. In the woods of Rukkajärvi, Finland, in the extremely cold month of November 1942, a man thought to be a Soviet spy faced his last day. When the spy was captured in the brutal continuation war, his or her future was set. When the prisoner laughed, it surprised the Finnish soldier who was supposed to kill him. Everyone who saw it will never be the same after seeing that scary event in the cold air. In the bare plain of Rukkajärvi, Finnish troops fought to reclaim land they had lost to the Soviet Union in the Winter War. Threats all the time and spies' work hurt military moves and morale. Since too much was at stake to risk forgiving, getting one meant quick justice. The fact that this spy didn't follow orders even when he knew he would die said a lot about how complicated war is for people's minds. Was that the last brave thing you did? Ridicule? Or is it just crazy behavior caused by the constant stress of war? As the Finnish man raised his gun, the moment seemed to last forever. What thoughts were going through everyone's mind? Did they still laugh after the shot was fired, or did they see it as justice? The answer stays stuck on that terrible November day. In Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia in 1943, the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, WAACs, went through tough physical training that pushed them to their limits. The ceiling ladder was the one that caught me off guard. Moving from bar to bar tried more than just physical strength. It also tested mental toughness, mental focus, and determination. It was clear that many of these women had never been through such physical challenges before, but they were showing that they had the toughness and endurance needed for military service. The WAAC training was different. In a society where women were still fighting for equality, these recruits were breaking gender norms and taking on jobs that were usually reserved for men. It was like a furnace of change at Fort Oglethorpe, where people were shaped into soldiers ready to help the military effort. The challenge course wasn't just a physical test. It also showed how hard it was for these women to prove their worth in a society that didn't trust them. As you watched them swing through the air, you had to wonder, did they know how they were changing history? They looked determined, with tense muscles and a determined look on their faces. Would their work be forgotten because of the war, or would it be seen as a turning point for women in the military? Time would show what they left behind. It was tense on the US Coast Guard cutter Spencer on April 17, 1943, as the crew got ready to protect their route from a dangerous Nazi threat. A German U-boat called U-175, which was meant to get through the convoy's defenses and deal a terrible blow, was deep under the Atlantic waves. The crew of the Spencer were trained and ready to fire depth charges into the ocean. The blasts sent tall plumes of water into the air. Underwater, the fight for power had already begun. The sinking of U-175 wasn't just another battle. It was a major victory in the ongoing Battle of the Atlantic. The convoy system saved the Allies' lives because it moved important supplies across dangerous seas where German submarines were always a threat. Every defense that worked against a U-boat attack made Allied troops more determined and kept the supply line safe. The crew of the Spencer could only guess what was below as they watched the water boil from the blast. Was the U-boat ready for another attack, or had they stopped it? Everyone on deck knew that the water was just as mean as the enemy. Would their convoy be able to get through the dangerous road without getting hurt? Clark Gable, whose name is linked to fame, wasn't in Hollywood. He was wearing a military outfit on an airplane somewhere in England. Even though he was famous for his great roles on film, the actor had given up fame for duty. Gable was not just a figurehead. He was a gunnery instructor in the US Army Air Force who trained soldiers and manned guns to get ready for the constant air battle over Europe. It wasn't just a matter of patriotism for people to join the military. After actress Carole Lombard died in a plane crash while on a war bond tour, Gable devoted himself to the war cause. After becoming a member of the Army Air Force, he got his wings and flew in several bombing missions over German-occupied territory. His trip to England wasn't just for attention, it showed that he really wanted to help the fight against tyranny. As Gable looked up at enemy fighters in the sky while handling the weapon on the plane, one couldn't help but wonder what was going through the mind of this Hollywood star who had become a soldier. Was he thinking about his life in Hollywood, or the dangerous jobs that were still to come? Because he was both weak and strong, his story of the war will live on forever. In the middle of Manchester during the Second World War, the damage from the Blitz left marks that will last for generations. This city was a major target for the Luftwaffe, and bomb damage was all too frequent. With its factories, trains, and warehouses, Manchester became an important part of Britain's war effort. The Germans tried to destroy it with bombs. Whole neighborhoods were turned into rubble, and the strange shapes of the destroyed buildings watched the chaos of the fight in silence. In 1940, during the Christmas Blitz, thousands of bombs fell over 2 nights, killing hundreds and leaving tens of thousands of people without homes. This strike is very well known. Even though so much bad happened, Manchester's spirit stayed strong. A lot of work was done by volunteers to pick up trash, save lives and rebuild what was lost. Families ran into basements and air raid shelters to hide, where they spent sleepless nights under constant fire. When people came out of the rubble every morning, they were always asked, how much more could they handle? Did they now live in this world? Or would the constant bombing ever end? The resilient people of Manchester kept going, showing that people can keep going even in the worst situations. The 503rd Parachute Ski Battalion of American soldiers lay in their sleeping bags in the cold, harsh mountains. Their bodies hurt from the hard terrain they had just climbed. These elite soldiers were part of a specialist squad and were trained for the worst circumstances by skiing and hiking over snow-covered mountains to get ready for airborne attacks in the worst places. In 1943, the battalion's hard snow training was more than just getting them ready for the dangerous and unpredictable nature of mountain fighting. It was winter 1943. These extra lessons for the 503rd were meant to prepare them for tasks in places like the Italian Alps, where the enemy might be waiting in the mountains to attack. These men were tired from skiing in thick snow and climbing steep hills for hours. They went outside into the night to find some peace and quiet. The only sounds they heard were the snow and the stars above. While they lay there in the freezing cold, there was still a doubt. Would these men, who had been trained in the harshest conditions, be able to handle the much tougher challenges of war when the time came? Will and courage. Would they be enough to win the toughest fights, both on the ground and in their own minds? Time would only show. Sergeant J. Dickinson from Canada and Sergeant F. Gilkers from Trinidad were on a British airstrip in 1943. Before getting on their plane for a dangerous raid on Hamburg, they had a moment of fun. Without a doubt, the mission was heavy. This was going to be another night in the sky over enemy country, a dangerous trip. Even though they were scared and tense, the two men told a joke together. They were finding comfort in laughter before facing what they didn't know. They became friends, but they also had been through war together. They were soldiers from different parts of the world who were fighting for the same cause. The noise of plane engines roaring and the activity on the base made them think of what was to come. As part of the strategic bombing operation by the Allies, the raid on Hamburg was meant to damage Nazi industry and lower morale. However, there were a lot of risks, and not all the airmen came back. As Dickinson and Gilkes got on their plane, there was a question in the air. Would they make it back, or would this be their last mission? There was always the chance of war, and no one knew if they would make it to the next joke. Right then, the unknown of what would happen was as big as the sky they were about to fly into. At Paris Island, where potential US Marines train, the seriousness of military life starts to take shape. Marines-to-be spend about 3 weeks of their tough 7-week training program on the gun range, getting used to the weapons they will use in battle. Because they want to get better at every part of their weapon, the trainees learn how to accurately handle and fire rifles. With each bullet fired, a person gets closer to becoming a Marine, a member of the elite group that will be very important in the Pacific and beyond. Still, learning how to use a gun is just the beginning. After weeks of shooting drills, the trainees move on to more advanced combat training, which focuses on hand-to-hand fighting and the practice of the bayonet. With bayonets on their guns, recruits learn how to fight in the closest, cruelest way possible at these times. Plus, the daily calisthenics, which are done with guns, help these young men and women become the tough troops they need to be by building their discipline and strength. As they work out, one worry hangs heavy in the air. Would they be ready to face the horrors of war when the call came? Or would the hard training they went through be enough to prepare them for what was to come? The real test to their determination would only become clear over time. Thank you for revealing the stills of the past with us. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who loves uncovering history's hidden truths. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Remember, behind every still, a story unfolds.